way says I was basically saying D. Smith is a liar.
Yep.
But when it came to these misogynistic, when it came to these homophobic, now all of a sudden the groundswell, and what I'm saying is, I believe all minorities should be treated equally. The LGBTQ community shouldn't carry more weight than the women community or the black community or the Asian community. And it seems to be what's happening, Skip, because the groundswell wasn't like it was when he said that, when he said about D. Smith. Everybody's like, well, you know, that might have been. But when it came to the other group, Lord, that's a bridge too far. We can't cross that one.
Yeah, but let's not try to sort of qualify each of the offenses.
No,
right?
that's what I'm saying.
Right.
We all, because if we're minorities, we all should be. I'm all about fairness, Skip. For me, the way you act, you come in here, you talk to security, you talk to maintenance, you talk to all of them like you do Shanks, like you do Charlie Dixon, like you do Witt. I treat everybody the same, Skip, because that's how I would want to be treated. So all I'm saying is let each minority group community carry the same amount of weight. You should be outraged equally.
Well,
that's
obviously, the first that should have been outraged were those in his locker room.
Correct, and I believe they were.
And they were. And by the way, how painfully ironic that Carl Nassib, first openly gay player, is sitting in the locker room. Okay.
But he had no, Skip, he had no idea, no knowledge of this. He had no knowledge of this because can you imagine had this come out and they asked Carl Nassib what would he have thought? So that's going to be very interesting because you know that's coming on Wednesday.
It will come.
You know that's coming.
I would agree. Okay, so I'm reading the New York Times avalanche of emails, the reporting, and let's qualify this. This reporting had to come from a leak from somewhere.
Yes.
So somebody who had the goods, because it was an NFL investigation into workplace misconduct within the Washington football team.
Correct.
And we've heard lots about that misconduct. In so doing, they confiscated or commandeered all the emails, and Bruce Allen is emailing Jon Gruden out of his Washington football account, right?
Correct.
So it's there, and there's still a trail of that left by Bruce Allen, who's no longer with the organization.
Right.
And so they find these, and they leak originally to the Wall Street Journal on, what was it, Friday? The racist one. And then it was almost like, okay, Mark, you didn't move. You're still sitting still with your hands tied behind your back. You're not going to do anything about this. And it almost came across to me that somebody upstairs said, okay, if that's not enough, try this. Boom. Bombshell it.
Correct.
Right? Just lay it out there.
Yes.
And the New York Times was the beneficiary of this bombshell.
Correct.
So here we go. And so I'm reading the New York Times last night, and their summation of these emails. Taken together, the emails provide an unvarnished look into the clubby culture of one NFL circle of peers, where white male decision makers felt comfortable sharing pornographic images, deriding the league policies, and jocularly sharing homophobic language. It goes on to say their banter flies in the face of the league's public denouncements of racism and sexism.
But they'll paint the end zone now. You're going to end racism and end hate and Black Lives Matter in the end zone.
And goes on the New York Times, and its promises to be more inclusive amid criticism for not listening to the concerns of black players who make up about 70% of the rosters. So I keep reading, and then I get to this little nugget. Some of the emails between Gruden and Allen also included businessman friends. One is the co-founder of Hooters. The next is the longtime executive director of the Outback Bowl, which is held in Tampa, Florida, where John was the coach for a long time. And the founder of PDQ Restaurants, a Tampa-based fried chicken franchise. Well, this is the ultimate sort of good old boy network. This is a little email network in which they are sharing slurs.
Very comfortable. Now, this is not, like I said, Skip, now, obviously, if he feels comfortable enough to put this in an email, imagine when he's just around them face-to-face, the conversations that they're having. they're probably a lot more graphic and a lot more detailed than what he shared in an email, which he's, like I said, to take time, you know what? I mean, as you're reading it, you're typing like, I don't know if I should send this. I mean, man, this might be a trail. But you're not thinking, Skip, well, what if they come up on the criminal? You don't think, Skip, you're not thinking like that.
I don't think that.
No. It's just like anytime you get mad at somebody, you send them an email, I hate you, you make me sick, and the first thing you see, that shows up on TMZ, or that shows up in some tabloid or something.
Okay. So, finally, it came down to Mark Davis having to tell Jon, I'm going to give you the opportunity to resign.
Correct.
Right? Because let's be honest, it was over.
It was over.
He was effectively fired, but allowed by his very close friend, his quote-unquote brother, Mark Davis, to resign to try to preserve what's left of his legacy and image.
Correct. Right.
So what does then transpire? Elevated is Rich Bisaccia, who is the assistant head coach, to be the interim head coach. And we still have a bunch of football games left, right? We're only 5 games.
12 games left.
We got 12 games left. And this disturbed me because Rich Bisaccia has been Jon's right-hand man for a long time, dating back to his time in Tampa.
Correct.
He's always been a special teams coach, but he's always been the assistant head coach.
Right.
Well, like-minded, I don't know. It's disturbing that we could go from Jon Gruden, what we now know that has been exposed about him, to one of his closest friends, Rich Bisaccia, has been elevated. Well, wouldn't you want to separate yourself from...
You would probably think so when you're being Jon Gruden's best friend for probably the better part of 2 decades.
That is correct.
And if he's had conversation with Bruce Allen and others, I can assure you he's had conversation with Bisaccia in the same context, if not more graphic. Now, it might not be emails, but I'm saying, Skip, the way we talk to our friends is one thing. And for you to take the time to put that down on an email? Really? And still, Skip, at what point in time is he going to say, you know what? He needs to do a sit down and say there to the offended groups, I offended you. I said some insensitive things. I want to apologize. Not that I didn't mean to hurt. Skip, that only matters to you. The groups that you offended is still equally offended whether you meant to do it or not. That's what I keep telling. Intent only matters to you. A group or a person is equally as hurt whether you meant to do it or not. Apologize sincerely. Offer without explanation. Bad moment, come to find out you had 7 years of bad moment. Now, I want to see how his former players and coaches and friends, how they say, you know what, that's not it, Skip. We get this all the time. People do things like, I've known him, he's been my neighbor for 20 years, and I never got that sense that he would do this, or he would. What was he supposed to do? Just come out and just be blasting, just saying things like this in public? Of course not. Stop pretending because you work with someone, you know that person. Because you don't, and then you vouch for him, and this more information comes out, it makes it like, well, you just said, you know, hey, let's move on. And that's the thing, Skip, why we got to move on? They said this about D. Smith, we got to just move on. Even Coach Dungy, I love Coach Dungy. He's a great man. But it seems to when people criticize our race, our minority group, the African-American, move on. Okay, they say move on. He said he was apologized. But can we get like some kind of ban? Can we get like a 6-month policy where we don't get to move on, that we hold people accountable?
The excuse was this was something that was uttered or written 10 years ago.
Yes.
Well, then.
Well, this was written 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. You see? You'll see where I'm going with this, Skip. That's all I'm saying.
And I kept reading before this avalanche hit of, well, it's been 10 years, so he's grown through those 10 years. How? Because how was he forced to grow? Nobody knew what he needed to improve, right?
Very few people will stop a behavior unless they're forced to stop said behavior, Skip. That's normally how it happens. People just don't say, you know what, I'm doing wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. Let me stop. Drinking and driving, more times than not, it takes the police to catch you before you stop. Or if you're speeding, it takes the cops to catch you before you slow down. Whatever the behavior. My grandfather used to say, boy, given a choice to do right or wrong, and there's no one there to hold you accountable for the wrong, more times than not, people will do wrong.
I don't know. I could argue with that.
No, but see, you looking at greater intent. You talking about murder, robbery, and things of that nature. What about speeding? What about loitering? What about saying things that they shouldn't say? I'm saying just all those wrong. I'm not going to the higher end of the spectrum of wrongs. I'm talking about wrong.
Yeah.
Because if it's wrong, it's wrong. We don't have to do degrees.
Okay. All right. Briefly, let's go back to the football field just for a moment.
Okay.
Where does Mark Davis now turn for his next savior of the Oakland Raiders, who, by the way, since they made it to that Super Bowl back in, what was it, the 03 season, they've made the playoffs.
Yeah.
It was in 03.
Right.
02 season.
Right.
They've made the playoffs one time since then.
Right.
Okay, so now where did they turn? You know, my guy Kellen Moore in Dallas is going to be at the top of a lot of lists. Joe Brady will be up there.
Yep.
Poor Eric Bieniemy, his name's going to get thrown out there again. Will this be the time that he finally breaks through and gets a job? I'm a fan of Gerard Mayo, who's only the linebacker coach for Belichick because his son appears to be coordinating the defense along with Bill. Byron Leftwich has got a shot, I would say, as that team gets better and better. And Doug Peterson is still sitting out there, a made man because he won a Super Bowl. And then my other guy at the University of Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley, is really good at what he does. And I think there's going to be a groundswell again to pull him out of college football because he's the one guy, other than Doug Peterson, who actually has been a head coach.
Right.
So what's your gut? Where does it hit you?